それでは皆様、次のセッションをご紹介させていただきます。ビットコイン大量購入、上場企業メタプラネットの戦略。Massive Bitcoin purchases, Metaplanet's strategy. And for this session, we have Metaplanet Incorporated Representative Director and President Simon Gerovich. Our moderator is Joe Takayama. それではどうぞ。And now, please come to the stage.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And then today we have a, interview or fireside chat with Simon. Why you guys buy Bitcoin and other questions around that. And what a crowd! I'm very excited. So let's kick off with the introduction of Simon, yourself, and also the Metaplanet, please.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm Simon Gerovich. I am the president of Metaplanet Inc. We are a listed company on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. In April of this year, we announced that we were adopting a Bitcoin standard. So we converted all of our cash reserves into Bitcoin, and our stated objective going forward is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible on our balance sheet going forward. I started my career actually here in Tokyo at Goldman Sachs. I was a derivatives trader. I did that for 5 years, and in 2005 left Japan, moved to Thailand, and ended up starting a hotel business. It was a Pan-Asian hotel company, and as part of our network, we had a public company in Japan, and that is effectively the source of the business that we have now. It's from that same public company.
Thank you. I'm the moderator today. I'm Joe. I run the Crypto YouTube podcast in Japan. And I think a lot of people want to ask you many questions. I asked Twitters and a bunch of questions I got. And the first question and the questions that I got the most is why you buy Bitcoin? Or in other way, what are the circumstances that you can buy Bitcoin, or you have to, or you want to buy Bitcoin?
So our public company in Japan was called Red Planet Japan. It was a owner and operator of budget hotels in Japan. It was a great business plan and great business model, but we all know that when COVID happened, that was incredibly difficult for the hospitality industry. And so we had to make a very difficult decision at that time. We had to downsize. The business was not going particularly well, and I would call ourselves a bit of a zombie company at that time, without a real viable business. And so Bitcoin was something that I've been very passionate about on the side for some time. I purchased my first Bitcoin back in 2013 on a very famous exchange here in Japan called Mt. Gox. And for many years really looked for an opportunity to bring my side passion together with our core business. And so we convened a series of board meetings, had discussions at the board level about what to do next, and we were able to convince the board to allow us to take this new exciting path forward. So we effectively sold all of our hotels at that time, and we used the cash that we had to buy our first portion of Bitcoin. And then from that point onwards, we're now really on a path to raise as much capital as we can over time, and there's various tools that I'm happy to go through on what a corporation can do. Yeah, our stated objective is to use the capital markets and the tools available to us to purchase as much Bitcoin as possible.
Thank you. Was it very difficult to convince the board?
Again, I think we were quite lucky at that time because we had a struggling business that wasn't generating cash flow. And so we were looking and investigating what to do at that time, and Bitcoin was, for me, the logical choice. No one else on the board knew anything about Bitcoin, and so there was a bit of an exercise to educate and convince. But because MicroStrategy had established the playbook, and they must be given credit where credit is deserved, and it was very easy, really, for us to follow that playbook. So I do hope that more corporations around the world, and certainly in Japan, will consider doing something similar.
How was the reaction from shareholders? And also, did you ask any questions, from other corporates? Maybe some people DM you or reached out to the IR or anything?
The public perception has been very positive, and I'm very grateful for that. An interesting statistic is we had about 7,000 shareholders back in April. This is before we announced that we were adopting a Bitcoin standard. When we last checked, we have now almost 50,000 shareholders, and most of that growth has come from Japanese retail investors. So we're incredibly grateful for that. One thing that was important for us after we made this change was to convene a shareholder meeting. We wanted to make sure that we would communicate clearly to our shareholders and get their buy-in. And so we had this shareholder meeting back in June, at the end of June this year, so a few months ago. And in that meeting, we announced a few things. One was making Bitcoin front and center. So we added the objective to acquire Bitcoin in our articles of incorporation. We also announced that we would be increasing our authorized capital, allowing us to raise more equity in the future. And all of those resolutions passed with practically 100% approval. So we do feel now that we have the support of our shareholders and their buy-in, and we can really push forward now with the knowledge that what we're doing is something that the public market is happy about.
And now you will buy more Bitcoin, right? And then you have hotel business. Well, what is going to be your main core business from here? Is it going to be changed, or what do you think?
And so our core business has always been in hotels. We sold all of our hotels except for one. And so we have one hotel in Tokyo. It is a budget hotel. It was acquired before to be one of our branded hotels. And what we're working on now, which I'm very excited to share, is we plan to convert that into the Bitcoin hotel. So we're working now with designers and architects to reposition the hotel to be the Bitcoin hotel. We hope this can be a physical location in Tokyo, not just for those who live in Japan, but those who travel from abroad, to be a place to learn about Bitcoin, learn about its history. We're planning a Bitcoin museum, which I think will be very exciting. But that will be our core operating business. We also announced a month ago at Bitcoin in Nashville that we acquired the license for Bitcoin Magazine in Japan. Bitcoin Magazine is one of the most successful media companies that focus specifically on Bitcoin. They're one of the earliest players in the space, and we're very excited now to be the license holder for Bitcoin Magazine in Japan. We want to do our part in onboarding more people into Bitcoin, particularly in Japan, and we think that with that platform, that will make it a lot easier for us to do.
What are the related corporate action you took or you had to take, to buy Bitcoin or to do anything related to it?
So we announced about, I want to say 3 weeks ago, that we would have a rights issue. And that rights issue now is pending. And so any person who buys shares or owns shares as of next Tuesday will have the right to subscribe for one new share. And so effectively, it's our way to raise additional capital. We're raising 10 billion yen, which is around $70 million US dollars. We were very thoughtful about the way we would raise money in this next round. A lot of companies will go to a private equity group, they'll go to a large corporation and offer them shares at a discount. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to make sure that this offering would be available to every single one of our shareholders on an equal basis. And so our 50,000 shareholders will have the right to subscribe for a new share that we can raise $70 million in that process, about 10 billion yen. And the plan for that, if you can guess, is to purchase more Bitcoin.
To purchase more Bitcoin, the fundraising strategy from here is going to be changed. MicroStrategy has been, did the multiple fundraising things before. So what's your plan?
The most exciting thing about MicroStrategy, and I think the reason why they have been so successful, is Michael Saylor understands that volatility is your friend. And having started as a derivatives trader, I understand implicitly the value of volatility. What MicroStrategy does is they issue convertible debt, and they can issue that convertible debt very cheaply. And the reason for that is that in a convertible bond, you have a call option. That call option value goes up if there is volatility. And so people who buy this debt, they're happy to buy it at very low interest rate because of that embedded call option. And so our stock is even more volatile than MicroStrategy. And that is going to be a very interesting feature, not a bug, for us. And I think in the medium term, we would be looking to issue convertible debt. I'm hoping that we will be able to issue the debt at a negative interest rate. Imagine if investors will pay us 0.5% or 1% to be able to lend us money. And I think they'll do that because they want that embedded call option in the convertible debt.
I see. Thank you. And also, since you started buying Bitcoin and also acquired a license of the Bitcoin magazine, along with those lines, what are the strategies, growth strategies of Metaplanet from here? Is it going to be changed? Right, of course. Can you explain a little bit?
Growth strategies?
Yes.
So a traditional corporation, their focus is on earnings per share. That's the traditional metric. You want a company that has good cash flow, you want it to have good earnings, and that's looked at on an earnings per share basis. If you're a company like Metaplanet or MicroStrategy, where the bulk of your assets are in Bitcoin, it's a different mindset. It's less about earnings per share, it's more about Bitcoin per share. And so our objective is to increase Bitcoin per share through dilution over time by what we call accretive dilution. So if the stock is trading at multiple times book value, that is an opportunity for us to sell new shares. But it isn't bad for shareholders. It may be dilutive on a per share basis, but on a Bitcoin per share basis, it is actually accretive. So every shareholder will have a greater claim to the number of Bitcoin that the company has. And so the core function, the core purpose now of Metaplanet going forward is to be a vehicle that provides leveraged exposure for investors around the world to Bitcoin. Having said that, we also have our hotel business, which will be the Bitcoin Hotel. We have our media business. And then we would love to explore over time ways that we can be more involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I'm not exactly sure today what that is, but I think once we establish ourselves as one of the large Bitcoin players in Japan, I'm very hopeful that we'll have lots of interesting partnership opportunities, other ways for us to generate more revenue, and that revenue, of course, will go into buying more Bitcoin.
I see. And in the US, MicroStrategy is playing a role to explain or teaching to the other corporate how to buy Bitcoin, how to adopt Bitcoin on the balance sheet, etc. What is going to be your role, or what's the hope? What are you going to do in Japan? Are you going to have a session, or do you have any plan around that?
I mean, we definitely feel that we have a great responsibility. We're very fortunate that we are able to execute this strategy. But above and beyond that, we definitely want to onboard more Japanese into Bitcoin. What's fascinating, and I checked the data before we walked on stage, there is 2 quadrillion yen worth of household savings in Japan. More than 50% of that, 1 quadrillion yen, is in cash. That is $7 trillion. corporations have probably a third of that also sitting in cash. There's a lot of cash sitting there doing nothing. Right now they're earning 0% interest. Topics over the past 10 years had a compounded yield of 10%. That really is the risk-free rate. And so it is really timely, I think, for Japanese retail investors to embrace Bitcoin as a way to hedge against a destruction of purchasing power, a weakening yen. So if we can do our part in onboarding people at this critical time, then I think we'll be very, very happy to have achieved a little bit towards that goal.
Great. I think in the audience, there are a lot of people from Japanese corporation or the corporates in Japan. And I think they're curious about how actually did you buy Bitcoin? Did you buy Bitcoin through the exchange, or did you use any services and so on? Can you dig into it, please?
Sure. The easiest ways to buy Bitcoin, I suppose, for a retail investor is to open up an account with one of the exchange operators. I think we had Bitflyer as a logo on the side there a while ago. They'd be a great exchange to use, but there's many, many options out there. For us, we purchased our Bitcoin as a combination through exchanges and through OTC desks.
And like other Japanese corporates, that's easy to adapt it, or did you spend a lot of time adapting the services, or you think it's easy for other exchange or for other corporates to do so similarly?
I think it's very straightforward. I think the great thing about a lot of the exchange operators is they're very willing to hold the hand of new corporates. There aren't that many corporates that are buying Bitcoin now, so if you call any one of them up and say that we're considering doing that, they will literally roll out the red carpet for you. Unlike perhaps working with a bulge bracket securities firm, unless you're trading billions of dollars, they don't want to talk to you. But the exchange operators in Japan are very professional and very, very helpful.
But if so, you think there are a few more at least, or many more corporates buying Bitcoin in the future? Do you see anything, things like that?
Having lived and worked in Japan for a long time, what I've learned is that Japan is often very slow-moving and very conservative. Not that it's a bad thing, but it just means that it's slow to adopt sometimes some new technologies. I definitely feel that with Bitcoin. Other public companies, there are many public companies that do have some Bitcoin on the balance sheet, not as their primary kind of reserve asset, but just as the ordinary course of business, for their company. If you're an exchange operator, if you're in the crypto business, naturally you earn crypto. But the average age of a Japanese listed company board member is 63 years old, and so I think there's a bit of a challenge sitting at the boardroom table explaining that this digital asset that you can't touch and feel is somehow going to be a great use of the cash that you have. But again, that's something that we want to do our part in. One of the things that Metaplanet has on its website is Bitcoin consulting. So we would like to invite corporations in Japan to reach out to us. We're happy to share our findings, our playbook. There's a lot of nuances. And so, for example, a corporation that owns Bitcoin on their balance sheet has to pay tax on unrealized gains, unless that Bitcoin is stored with one of the approved custodians, and it's a Japanese custodian. And so things like that we've learned by doing, and really happy to share our best practices with other Japanese corporations who are interested.
I see. Time is running out, but I want to have two questions. What was the initial reaction that the stock price went up after you announced buying Bitcoin?
Well, the stock is incredibly volatile. But versus the time that we announced that we were buying Bitcoin, the stock now is up about 700%. I think more importantly, the volumes are incredible. So every single day it trades between $40 to $50 million, which is quite extraordinary for a stock of our size. So very grateful again for the interest that we have now from the broader investment community.
Thank you. And then last question is, what's your Bitcoin price prediction?
I'm always having to pare that back. I think I'm incredibly bullish. So I would say, you can hold me to this, I think within 5 years, we'll see Bitcoin at $1 million. And I don't know where yen will be then, so it could be significantly higher in yen terms, depending on where yen is. But $1 million in 5 years.
All right. Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you so much listening to us. It was a great session.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. We'd like to take a commemorative photo in the center, please. それでは記念写真を撮っていただきたいと思います。ありがとうございます。もう一度大きな拍手をお送りください。Please give it up for Simon and Joe。すごいですね。あと5年、ビットコイン100万ドルと言いまして、すごい。それでは次のセッションまでしばらくお待ちください。And now please wait as we prepare for our next session. Thank you.